This episode is brought to you by Encore Business Group, Ericola Aesthetic and General Dentistry, Williams Chiropractic, Elite Winning Solutions, and Sal's Complete Home Painting and Handyman Services. Shayne Graham's Extra Points with Ron Walsh airs live Thursdays, 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern on Jethro.fm.
Welcome to Shayne Graham's Extra Points with Ryan Walsh. I'm Jeff Isaac, filling in for Ryan, who's still playing in Las Vegas. We still haven't figured out. We were trying to figure that out Monday night when I was filling in on Sports Intel. What he's actually doing in Las Vegas, we still haven't found out. But hopefully he makes it back tomorrow because, you know, Vegas can be trouble. Shayne Graham with me in studio this week.
And you never walk away from a heater.
No. No. He says he doesn't have any vices.
Okay.
And he doesn't gamble. But I'm like, yes, but you go to Vegas to get vices, right? So we'll see. Anyway, Jeff, you've got Jeff Isaac in Thursday night. Shayne Graham's in studio. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Just got back from some travel.
All right, we'll talk about that a little bit later on. You know, Ryan always does it's National Something Day, and today is he had Burger Day, but it's not National Burger Day. I had to look it up. It's National Just Because Day. So just because. So just because I sat and watched a Seinfeld episode probably for the 100th time when I got home from work today. That's my relaxation, is a couple episodes of Seinfeld before I get on my bike to do some exercise. It's also National Banana Lovers Day. I don't know if you're a banana lover.
I enjoy a banana. I don't know if I ever say I really want a banana. I'm going to go get one.
Right. Yeah. Same here. And it's National Peach Day. Now, Monday was National Peach Pie Day. Today is National Peach Day.
Well, I do enjoy a good ripe peach, but also I don't know if I've ever said I really want a peach. I'm going to go get a peach.
Yeah, I feel the same. By the way, speaking of peaches, you have got me hooked on this Grater's ice cream.
I'm sorry. I sorry.
I kept asking Ryan, I'm like, when is Shayne back in studio? Because this Grater's ice cream is driving me nuts. And I can't go past the frozen food section or the dessert aisle in Meijer without peeking to see if they have a new flavor. So right now it's the black raspberry chip. And it's ridiculous.
Yes, it is.
And I think I'm like, why do I like it so much and keep going back? It's because it's not super sweet, and that chocolate is it's better than any ice cream I've ever had.
It really is. And the thing that I always find with some flavors is it's just rich enough in flavor, but it's not overpowering.
Right.
And sometimes, you'll have a flavor or dessert that's just like a little too rich, and you get the flavor of it, and that's about as much as you can take. It's just rich enough that if you put about a few little scoops in your bowl, you're like, maybe I can do another one.
See, that's the whole thing.
Maybe I can do another one.
I'd be less worried about eating a whole gallon if they came in gallons. The problem is you can finish a whole pint in a
easy
in a session.
Easy.
No doubt. I've had to okay, let's stop this before we get to I start to see the bottom of that cup. But I've been looking for peach. I haven't seen peach here in the Grand Rapids area. And the cherry sparkle, which was, I think it's wrapping up at the end of August. So I think there's only less than a week to get your cherry sparkle.
I don't know if I've ever had cherry sparkle. Maybe it's something I would like to try, but I also try to cut sugars out of my diet. So I haven't had Graters in quite a long time, I must add.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's just been a few days for me. Yeah, it's ridiculous. And what happens now is when you talk about Graters and you have Graters, now it's all over my Instagram and Facebook feed. So every time I go on Facebook, there's a commercial about Graters saying, "Oh, you can get 8 flavors and then they'll ship it all over the U.S." And I'm like, no, I haven't gone that far yet. But so anyway, we're going to get into some football talk. We got Tim Selgo, the former GVSU AD. We'll have him on here in just a few minutes. I'd like to talk to him about everything that's going on in the NFL with these players trying to go back to school. It's insane. So the ACC, I don't know if you heard this today, the ACC joined the Power 4 conferences and not allowing any professional athletes to come back, because you had the tight end from Cleveland who was going to get cut, and he's like, well, he's going to go back to LSU. He had another year of eligibility.
I mean, the thing that was always kind of the very strict code of the NCAA was that it was your amateur status. The things that took away your amateur status would be accepting money and goods for your play. Okay, so NIL kind of changed how that was looked at, but also once you become a professional, I feel like that affects your amateur status.
Yes.
And so I find it kind of weird that they've gotten so lax on that, because it's like, all right, well, I'm going to declare for the draft early, and then you don't get drafted, or you don't make the team if you do get drafted, or whatever, and you just say, oh, okay, I'll go back to college.
Right.
Like that was completely unheard of, because that was the whole point of declaring yourself eligible for the draft, was foregoing your eligibility because of your professional status at that point. And usually that meant if you declared for the draft, now you could accept, agents giving you money to pay for your training, or an advance on your potential future earnings to go ahead and buy stuff for mama, or whatever, everybody does.
Yep.
And that kind of took away your amateur status. I'm seeing this unfold, and it's kind of almost seems like it's like the death march of college football as we've known it. And it's really going to make, we've talked about this before, like the development of the player to be ready for the NFL is being cut shorter and shorter. The window of time, the patience, the process of that development, and kind of having stages for experience and all that is just really being cut short. And, it used to be, how fast can a kid, kids were trying to sue to get into the NFL earlier so that they could, forego that 3-year window. It used to be a 3-year window. And I think that was based on like bone density, maturity, actual physical type
science,
thing,
right? Yeah.
Because, you're taking hits from the biggest, strongest people in the world. Even though you're taking those kind of big hits in college, the average is still a little smaller, a little slower. You're not getting the fastest of the fast and the biggest of the biggest and all that. And, everyone was like, well, basketball can leave early. Well, basketball guys are typically freaks of nature that developed really early and got their height really early. And, they're grown men at 18, 19 years old, sometimes at 6'7" or 6'8", 6'9", whatever it may be. These football players, you're going to have a few of them that developed a little early, but for the most part, guys' bones are still developing. They're still creating density that they're going to have, whether they grow taller or not. They're still developing density, protection of their body, their brain, all of that kind of stuff. Yeah. So there's a reason why they did that. And now guys are fighting to either think they're going to go pro and then go back, or try to fight for extra eligibility if they can somehow find it. And it's really weird.
Now, I remember back in the day, I don't know if this was true in the NFL, but in the NBA, if you didn't sign with an agent, you could go try out for all these NBA teams. And if you didn't like where your draft status was going to be, you just went back, as long as you didn't sign with an agent. In fact, I know players, you rarely hear about it nowadays, because these kids leave after high school. But back in the day, I remember that. They're like, oh, he's going to feel around, and he'd go to camps and try out for the teams. And they were like, and they'd get a grade or whatever. And he'd be like, oh, I'm just going to go back and play basketball then, and then leave after his junior or senior year. I don't know if the NFL ever did that. I don't think they did. I think once you left, didn't you?
So the NFL, what they did is they came up with a panel of quote unquote experts. Some of them were former general managers, some of them former coaches, some of them former scouts. And they would do this analysis, and they would give you a grade. And that grade was, if you came out right now, what would your quote unquote realistic measure be? And they would, a lot of guys would take that into account and say, okay, they said that I would be a potential 3rd, 4th round draft pick, so I feel like I can leave now.
Yep.
And it was kind of a tool that the NCAA and the NFL kind of partnered with to a degree to try to help some of these guys that were, maybe their egos got a little too filled up and said, oh, I'm going to leave early. And it's like, you sure you want to do that? Because a lot of guys who don't leave early still don't make it. And some, there were guys that were wanting to leave early that just weren't the superstars they thought they were. And maybe there were some who were actual superstars that deserved it because they were going to be good enough to do it. And we've seen those guys. But this has kind of been put in place to try to help these guys out. And there's nothing says it's foolproof, but it's a little different than actually going and being seen by the scouts. It's a group of, player personnel type people that can try to give you their evaluation of the whole situation. And
NIL now changes the whole thing because some of these guys can stay in college and make money, give some money to mama, get her a house, whatever, and then still develop and play football for 4 years and make money and then get that draft status up higher, hopefully after graduation. So
yes.
We're going to get more into that with Tim Selgo, friend of the show, next. Keep it here. You're listening to Shayne Graham's Extra Points with Ryan Walsh on Jethro FM.
Extra Points is presented by Eric Hull DDS, Aesthetic and General Dentistry in Comstock Park. Dr. Hull has been named one of Grand Rapids' top dentists 4 times by the readers of Grand Rapids Magazine, but he's not resting on his laurels. He's constantly working to get even better through additional training, learning new skills, and earning new professional certifications. That's Eric Hull DDS, located just off Alpine Avenue in Comstock Park and online at greatmismiles.com.
I'm Kevin Matthews, working hard to be your 3rd favorite radio station, Jethro FM.
The Grand Rapids Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the city's rich sports history by honoring prominent West Michigan athletes and those who have contributed greatly to sports on a local, state, or national level. A class is elected each year by the Board of Trustees, then honored at an induction ceremony in the fall. The GR Sports Hall of Fame also presents annual events in support of West Michigan athletics and raises funds to support local youth organizations and charities. Follow the Grand Rapids Sports Hall of Fame on Facebook and check out pictures and biographies of all the inductees at grshof.com.
Like a ghost in the night, without any light, they run through the steps of the wild. The dangerous life, we are the golden A new day is finally breaking. The sun rises up from the east. A terrible Lord is assembling. Ready, go! Our arrows they darken the skies, raining down like on hellfire's eve. We scatter them into the wilds. Pursue, kill, leave no one alive. Like a ghost in the night, without any light, they run through the steppes and the wilds. A dangerous life, we are the golden horde. Fire and steel will make them kneel, touching their temples with ease. A third of us, we are the golden horde.
All right, welcome back in to Shayne Graham Extra Points with Ryan Walsh. Jeff Isaac filling in for Ryan. Shayne Graham in studio with us this week. Trying to get a hold of our friend Tim Selgo. We'll try him again here in the commercial break. For now, we got Shayne Graham in the studio. We were talking off air before the show about you training a 9-year-old in one of your kicking camps. I want to hear about this. I want the listeners to hear about it as well.
So I had someone reach out to me on my website. I usually try to answer those emails as soon as I see them. And it happened to be a guy that I went to kicking camp with when I was in high school.
Okay.
We hadn't talked to each other in probably 25, 30 years. Told me he had a 9-year-old excited about getting ready for kicking. He plays soccer. Just wants to see how excited he could get about it if he had someone. And he said, not that I can't teach him a few little things, but I think I'm limited because, he went to Columbia University and became a periodontist. So
Okay.
I think he did okay for himself.
Sounds like it.
But he said that, his son is excited about it, doesn't really know a lot about what he's doing, and just wanted to see how he felt. So it was really cool to kind of close the circle on an old relationship like that and be reconnected with someone that I was really good friends with a long time ago. But show up, got the kid, got on the field with him, was very attentive, asked great questions, took directions well. The motor response to certain things aren't going to be as consistent because they're still trying to figure out, riding their bike.
Right. Exactly.
There's still things they're trying to figure out at that age, but every now and then, like he'd kick a few balls, and there were a few things that he wasn't quite doing right or didn't understand how to do with, keeping his foot locked through contact so that the ball actually jumped off his foot versus slapping off his foot. And I told him, like, hey, you're going to be able to kick this ball halfway up that net before we leave today. And he's like, no, there's no way. And before we left, he was kicking a few balls, and we backed up 10 more yards than he was kicking at the beginning of the day. And then, got to work with him again on the second day. We reviewed some things. We got a little bit more in depth in some things, and the kid really had fun with it. And, I enjoy that. Like, that's what I really enjoy is kind of when you see things click and you see they'll make a kick that they've never made before or make it in a way that they've never made it versus one that just kind of barely goes over and they're happy to make it to one that goes over with extra yardage and extra height and had more power behind it. And then they realize, like, man, I can kick further back, but also, like, maybe I'll be able to do this a little better in the future when I grow and get bigger. And seeing the excitement of someone for the first time kind of picking things up is really like just a joy to see because,
I bet.
You remember the first time we ever did anything that we really liked and wanted to continue doing, whether it was a sport or an activity or whatever, getting to be a part of that was really cool. And then, when the dad calls you and says, hey, I talked to him later on, and he said he can't wait to work with you more. So let's set up a schedule. Let's try to make this happen more often. So that was really cool. It's flattering, makes the ego feel good.
I bet.
But, also knowing, like, now there's a fire and excitement in this kid to do something that his dad also did and to do something that you had a part in kind of helping him kind of progress that excitement.
And you said he plays soccer as well, right?
Yes.
So that's a great
it's a great segue. And I think probably 95 or higher % of kickers were probably soccer players early on, at least in their life. If not, some guys play soccer and football all the way through high school. And then, if college isn't an option, they maybe play in a club league or something and continue it. But some guys play it competitively up until the opportunities run out.
Right. And so 9 years old, you're thinking it's probably not a lot of technical stuff. It's just trying to get him to show that he can actually kick that ball. Like you said, hey, by the end of this session, we're going to have you kicking in the middle of the net.
And the technical stuff, you keep it very close to baseline. You keep it very close to basics, simple. And then we started creeping into a couple little tweaks and things that I could kind of see what he could absorb and what he could manage. Because if you throw too much at him, it's just too many gears turning in their head, and they forget one and try to do the other and try to do the other and then forget the one. But trying to give him just enough puzzle pieces that he can put them together all at once, or enough puzzle pieces that if he puts most of them together all at once, he can still get a successful result from his performance. But knowing that, like, there were so many times he came so close to having a perfect hit on the ball, but he got away with making the kick. And even then he was impressed because he wasn't making those kicks before. Now he's not even doing it completely how he knows he can do. but it gives him the hope that when he starts figuring it out and putting it together more and then physically growing, it'll give him more chances to realize he can exponentially get better at this over time.
So it's no, I'm just asking questions because I'm thinking of, all right, a 9-year-old kid. There's no kicker shoes for 9-year-olds. So is it just like a regular football cleat or a soccer cleat?
Soccer cleats, yeah.
Are you
I mean, honestly, probably 100% of all kickers wear soccer shoes.
Okay. Yeah, not back in the day when they wore those, you know.
They had the square toe.
Yeah, the square toe and
I think Nike had one. It was called I don't know if it was called the boot or there was a name for it. I can't think of what it was. Mark Mosley was the last kicker to ever wear one in an NFL game.
Mosley. Yep.
It was white shoe, had a maroon stripe Nike swoosh on it, and it had a very thick, almost like cowboy boot style leather sole on the bottom.
Okay.
It actually looked like wood, but it was just layers of leather kind of glued together to make like a 1/2-inch thick sole with a square toe on the end of it. And they would grind the cleats down a little bit so the cleats didn't dig the ground too much. And some of those guys would actually splint or tape their ankle in a locked toe up position so that when their foot hit the ball, their toe didn't waver one side or the other. They could just swing right through it and keep that linear swing.
Wow. Now, are you using an official size football?
No, we used like his age group. I don't know the exact, if it's youth, if it's junior, if it's whatever, but it was a smaller football. His dad bought a few footballs, so we had plenty to get reps in. And, it was actually, the dad, he literally asked me, what do I need to have for him? And he literally had every single thing I talked about. So when I showed up, I basically felt like I had all of my equipment there that I would normally have with my training sessions.
Okay, that's fantastic. Now, and I imagine you're going to put all this on social media.
Yes.
So you could see videos, be another way to inspire other kids, correct? Having them watch this 9-year-old on YouTube kick these field goals, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah. So I've posted about him, but I'll probably put some more on there with some of his successful kicks, and then maybe some other young kid can see that I can do that too.
Heck yeah.
And hopefully I know a guy that can work with him.
That's fantastic. That's good to hear. 9 years old. That's a great start for these kids because they were talking earlier in the week about how important it is that ESPN still airs these Little League baseball games. And I'm like, it is very important because the numbers in Little League are just falling off the planet. And not only that, high school football, about high school football teams. I mean, the Gull Lake team that near Kalamazoo, they lost their whole senior season due to some awful, awful things. But Portage, a neighboring school, picked up the kids that weren't in trouble with what they did. What they did is they tortured these other kids. You know how you'd go in and you'd be hazed as a freshman,
like the hazing stuff.
Yeah, back in the day,
they took it a little too far.
Oh my gosh, it's stuff you can't even talk on the radio. But I mean, back in the day, it was like, all right, put your jockstrap on your head and run around the football field or whatever, or something like that.
I think the worst they may have done is maybe like buzzed your hair or something.
Yeah.
And that's actually a lot. I get that too, but still.
Yeah, but the coach and there's some other players were charged with assault. So some of the kids that still wanted to play and were still eligible were able to go over and play at Portage so they can, fulfill their senior year because you don't want to lose your senior year. And some of these kids, most of the kids, they're not going to go on to play college football or be a pro. Senior year is everything playing football. So it was good to hear, but we're going to take a short break. We'll be back with more. You're listening to Shayne Graham's Extra Point with Ryan Walsh on Jethro FM.
Extra Points is presented by Encore Business Group. Encore is your West Michigan resource for all your collectible and memorabilia needs. Encore Business Group consistently gets the best price for your valuables. For instance, they recently sold a Michael Jordan rookie card for $23,000, the highest price for that grade this year. So if you want to get the most out of your collectibles and avoid being taken advantage of, contact Encore Business Group. Just submit a message at Encore Business.
All right, we're back. Shayne Graham's Extra Points with Ryan Walsh. Jeff Isaac in for Ryan, who's still in Las Vegas. He'll be back on Monday. I know a lot of you will be thankful for that. We've got Shayne Graham in studio. And I wanted to talk to you about, because I'm so very interested in all this stuff. But so once the NFL, we're getting close to the NFL season and the training in high school. I know you train high school kids and college kids and guys trying to make it into the NFL. So when season starts, well, what does that look like for you?
So my time actually frees up quite a good bit. I am able to have a little bit more free time during the day. So that's when I am, trying to set up, some of the virtual training that I do over, video conference type stuff with kids that aren't local. And then I'll do some of my administrative work, keeping everything organized and tracked and all that. But in the evenings, I have some kids that want me to come to their practice. So locally, I'll go to their practice and I'll, if their coaches allow it, I work with them while they're at practice. I've got kids that say, hey, can you come and let me work with you after my practice? And I'll do that for some guys. But what I typically like to do Saturdays, I allow emergency sessions for kids that are just like, hey, coach, I'm really struggling. I really want to work with you. All I have is Saturday morning. I'll do an early Saturday morning session, but I usually leave my Saturdays open because we like to watch college football at my house, and that's kind of my recovery day of just relaxing. And then Sundays are my long days. So Sunday, I don't have a huge vested interest in watching NFL football. If a game's on and it's a team that I'm familiar with, I'll watch it, but I don't do the whole sit around and watch TV all day on Sunday. So that's when I give most of the guys a day to rest after their Friday game, and we do. I'll schedule light tune-up sessions.
Okay.
So I'll get 3, 4, 5 guys at a time, maybe at this hour and a half session, and then if another group of guys can come a little bit after that, they'll come. And we just do light review, and then we just do enough reps to kind of make sure that the kids are staying on their baseline of their habits and good repetitions. And if any of them are, hey, I've noticed that I've started doing this, then we work on that. I don't try to teach new technique. I do not try to change any technique during that time of the year, which is also why I tend to go very slow if I get a first-time client during that time, and I have to be very careful with what I try to do with them. And that's possible, and there are some guys that I have slowly changed some easy changeable concepts without reinventing the wheel. But then I try to still keep it, let's stay consistent, let's get together once a week or every other week, but let's not go crazy with how many reps, because I still got to keep you fresh so that you're good for your team. But also so you're not getting frustrated because you've tried to change something and you haven't quite gotten to the consistency of that change yet. You're still uncomfortable. So I always make sure that I don't go into that region. And then occasionally I'll have some free agent NFL guys that may not be on a team at the moment that'll come get some intensive work for a few days.
Okay.
Or I'll travel and show up somewhere to guys that ask me to come work with them.
Oh, that's Tim. Hold on a second. This is live radio, everybody. Of course, I miss him. We'll call him back here in a second. So the high school, rules-wise, they can still reach out to you and you can work with high school kids during the season.
Yes.
Because I know that there has to be rules in college where you're not allowed to do that.
Well, in college, I don't know that the rules state I can't go to their practice.
Right.
Because of, who the school's allowed to let in and who's allowed to be a coachable person on the field, all that kind of stuff. But if a college guy said, hey,
Jethro FM. Hey, Tim, how are you?
I guess what I was saying is if a college guy wants to get work, they can say, hey, meet me at this field at this time after practice, and it would be allowed, but it wouldn't be a rule breaker for that. But no, not anything involved with the actual team.
Okay. Yeah, I figured the high school would be a little less, they'd be more lenient on that with the college, and which is amazing. You have NIL, you've got NFL players trying to get back to college, but if you went on a certain campus and tried to train a guy, They could be fined. They could be, who knows?
Yeah, it would be
for a bowl, or who knows with all these
like a level 3 violation that they have to self-report, and if they don't self-report it, then it becomes a bigger. It's like, come on, this is stupid.
All right. Well, Tim Selgo, he's sorry he missed the call. He's back with us tonight. Tim, how are you tonight?
I'm great, guys. Thanks. I apologize for not being able to get your call. I don't know why, but I'm sitting here on my back deck. I'm actually watching my sophomore grandson's JV football game in Verona, Wisconsin, while I'm here in Michigan. How's that for 21st century technology?
That is great. That is great. And it's such a beautiful night to sit there and watch that football game on the deck, right?
Oh, man, it's fantastic. We have a lake home here in Canadian Lakes, and I'm up here right now, and it doesn't get any sweeter than this, man. I'm telling you.
Good. Well, we're glad you could make for the show. I wanted to get into this about. I know you heard about Dan Bartholomew hiring away from Western Michigan, goes to MSU as their new vice president and athletic director. What do you think about that hire?
Well, I don't know Dan at all, but I think it's a great hire. You know, from what I know and from what I've seen and read about him and heard from him and everything, I think he's probably exactly what Michigan State needs. You know, at the Power 4 level, at all levels of college athletics, they all want to make the magical announcement of some great hire they've got and win the press conference and so on. And Dan has done a great job at Western Michigan. Again, I've been watching it from a distance. I think he's done some great things down there at Western Michigan, and he's worked his way up the ladder. He's ready for this. And I think I give Michigan State credit. You know, they hired the guy from Georgia Tech, and then he went to Kentucky 8 months later. Well, that doesn't do him any good. You know, that does complete disruption of their athletics department and their institution. And, of course, the president was going to leave, and now he's coming back. And so they've had a bit of a mess there. They need stability. They need stability, and they need someone that is clearly hungry to be at Michigan State in the Power 4 level, and Dan appears to be that guy. And he'll work hard, I'm quite certain. And I think that's exactly what Michigan State needs. So, again, from a distance, I'm not involved in it at all, but I appreciate and admire people at higher levels in athletics looking at that level below them and looking for who's done really well at that level. As you guys know, I spent 20 years at Grand Valley in Division II. There's a ton of coaches and administrators in Division II that would be great in Division I if they ever got the chance. Some have. Brian Kelly would be the most obvious example from Grand Valley. And those that have clearly show they're as good as anybody in the country. They just need a shot. So good for Dan to get a shot. Good for Michigan State for hiring him.
Yeah. While at Western Michigan University, 37 conference championships. And they are currently, I know they just broke ground on a new $550 million downtown complex that's going to house their basketball and their hockey games, all privately funded, raised money by Dan Bartholomew. Yeah. And incredible with the students, with the families. Graduation went up. Everything just got better. I mean, the hockey team won their first national championship, the first national championship at Western in 60 years. So I think it is, and you said it, stability. This is exactly what Michigan State needed. All the talk was just all the chaos, people leaving, people coming, and then they lose their athletic director. This is the stability and the great hire that they needed in Dan Bartholomew.
Well, he brings a level of energy that they've got to have. You know, Pat Fitzgerald, football coach, brings that energy. Their women's basketball coach has that energy. Tom Izzo, of course, Tom's getting up there now, and he may not have the energy he had 10, 20 years ago, but Tom's still got energy, as evidence. He was pretty outspoken when they had the AD and president leaving. So, you know, I think that's what they need. I don't want to gloss over the fact now, as you mentioned, Dan, they raised $550 million to build that facility in Kalamazoo. Let me tell you something, folks. We throw the word billions around today like it's nothing. That's a lot of money, and that's really hard to do. For somebody in the Mid-American Conference to raise that level of funding, $500 million to get a facility done, that's really hard to do. That's a lot of hard work. That's a lot of building relationships. That's a lot of people having trust in you to be able to get that done. And that's what good leaders have to be able to do. And clearly Dan showed he did that at Western. And again, I don't know him, but from a distance, I've kind of admired the job he's done and wishing him the very best at Michigan State.
Yeah, we've talked to him a couple times here at Jethro on another Steve project who does a sports show on Wednesday. Is good friends with Dan. He's been on the show multiple times. I was very impressed when I produced the show when he was on. I know when he arrived at Western in 2022, you get honored if you donate as a donor. If you donate $10,000 or more, you get honored and you get a reward. When he arrived in 2022, there was one donor who donated over $10,000. When he left, there is 105. So just an incredible job, and I'm excited. I cannot wait. I'm a Michigan fan, but I always like to watch Michigan State succeed, and especially at the football program. You know, Izzo's been doing it for years with the basketball. You just like to see the football program get to what they used to be and what they're capable of being in the Big Ten.
Well, you know, I heard this today. I was shocked a little bit by it, but then I realized, yeah, that's probably correct. Michigan State is the Big Ten team. It's been the longest time of years since they've been in a bowl game. I think it was 2021 when they were last in a bowl game. That's the longest any Big Ten team has gone without being in a bowl game. And when you think about that, man, that's not good.
Yeah, when you figure in
you know,
Rutgers
hopefully they can get that turned around.
Yeah, when you figure in Rutgers and some of these other teams like Minnesota that have been down. I mean, look at what Indiana's done just in the last 3 years. But, yeah, Maryland in a bowl game.
Especially when you think about where D'Antonio had them playing in Big Ten championships and New Year's Bowls, things like that.
Yeah, and the CFP. Remember, they were in the CFP when it was 4 teams, and they lost to, I think, Alabama down in Dallas. But, you know, they had them at a high level. And it's going to take a while to get back there. It's not going to happen right away. But you got to hope they get back there for our state. You know, it's good for our state. There's so many Michigan State fans in the state of Michigan that, you know, you want to see them get back there.
Yep, and there's a lot of excitement. There's been talk of, you know, working on that new football stadium upgrades, the upgrades that Spartan Stadium needs. I just think Dan Bartholomew's the home run hitter that can get in there and can generate money and get the donors going again to get this new stadium up, and you know, all over all athletics, the women's and the men's. And I know Tom Izzo can probably finally sleep a good 8 hours, right? If he even does. Who knows the last time that man slept 8 hours? But I know he wasn't sleeping. He had a lot of sleepless nights with all this chaos going around at MSU.
Well, Michigan State got a huge boost from Greg Williams, the CEO of Acrisure, with gigantic gifts that he gave to the institution of, I think, $400 million with 300 designated athletics, somewhere in that ballpark. I don't know if I have it exactly right, but it's somewhere in that ballpark. So they've got a huge start on that. That's a tremendous boost, of course. And I haven't been in Spartan Stadium in a while, but the last time I was in it, they definitely needed bringing it in the 21st century, to be honest with you. And you know, that's constant in college athletics. You constantly have to be, somebody's always going to build a bigger and better facility than you have, and you've got to keep working at it and keep trying to build something bigger and better, and they need to do that with Spartan Stadium.
Tim, we've got to take a short break. Can you stick around for another segment?
Sure, be glad to do it, guys.
All right, we're going to take a short break. We'll be back with Tim Selgo. You're listening to Shayne Graham's Extra Points with Ryan Walsh, who are trying to come back and play college football. Now, the ACC joined the other Power 4 conferences earlier today by not allowing professional athletes to return. The latest was the Cleveland Browns tight end who is not going to make the team. I think he was going to get signed to the practice squad, but he's like, I can make more money going back to school and getting an NIL contract with LSU. Your thoughts on that?
Well, the situation is a bit unique, but it's not. And let me explain that. The NCAA, in my opinion, messed up when they moved to an age-based eligibility legislation in saying that student athletes now have 5 years to complete 5 seasons of eligibility. Until now, it was you had 5 calendar years to complete 4 seasons of eligibility. But they changed it to 5 years. You get 5 seasons of eligibility. You could get hurt one of the years and not play. You know, you might have circumstances, but you only got 5 years. And that's so that 23-year-olds are kind of the oldest age group. Because right now we got 25 and 6-year-olds playing in the NCAA college basketball and football and so on. All right. So they made this legislation, which is the right way to go in the future. I mean, we should have in college athletics 18 to 23-year-olds playing, not 18 to 25-year-olds. A 25-year-old against an 18-year-old is a mismatch. I don't care, whatever the sport. So they did the right thing in doing that. However, in doing that, they excluded the class of 2022. And the class of 2022 is the class after COVID. So the class of 2021 was the COVID kids. They got 5 years. And the class of 2023 and beyond all get 5 years. So the class of 22 was the only one that only got 4. And they're saying, hey, wait a minute. All the guys behind us and in front of us all got 5 years. And why do we only get 4? So some of them naturally went to court and sued to get a 5th year of eligibility. And they weren't wrong in trying to do that, okay? And there are some guys now on rosters in college football and will be in college basketball that were part of that class, but they did not sign professional contracts. What's happening, what the big controversy is with the SEC and LSU, and of course LSU is in the gray area and blurring the lines like they always do in everything.
No.
You know, they're trying to get some guys that sign pro contracts that are in NFL camps, but probably not going to make the 53-member NFL squad to come back and finish one more year at their institution. Well, that's where they're drawing the line. The SEC, the Big Ten, now the ACC, and the Big 12 will follow suit, has drawn the line and say, no, we're not going to make you eligible. Okay? So it's okay. For example, Indiana has this kid, Stephen Daly. That was, I think, a defensive lineman. That got hurt in if not the Big Ten championship game last year, the Rose Bowl maybe, and didn't play in the championship game, but he was a starter on the defensive line. Well, he never signed a pro contract, and he's back playing for Indiana this year because he's part of the class of 2022. So that class, several basketball and football players in that class sued and said, wait a minute, we should get a 5th year. The 2021 class got a 5th year. The 2023 and beyond classes all get 5 years. It's no fault of ours that the rule has changed now. We should get a 5th year. And, of course, if there were no NIL money, guys, we would not even be having this conversation. Let's make that clear. If it was just a full ride, we wouldn't be having this conversation. Nobody would care. But there's NIL money involved. So these guys that wanted to go pro and realized, geez, I may not be good enough to make it. I'm going to go back to college and make $500,000 to be a linebacker for LSU. Sorry, you can't do that. You signed a contract to go professional. That's where we draw the line. So I'm disappointed in the NCAA. I don't know why they didn't make the 2022 class eligible for a 5th year anyway. I thought they should have done that anyway. There aren't that many kids that would be able to take advantage of that. And I don't know why they didn't do that. But when they're not doing that, they cause themselves another problem. But that a kid has signed a professional contract, he cannot come back and play. So I heard some arguments today on national college radio, college sports radio, that why don't they? There's only a select few of them, you know, and they're all going. LSU had like 3 of them, but keep in mind their basketball team guys. They only have 4 eligible players now. Will Wade is their new coach. He was their coach there. They got fired because he was cheating before there was NIL money. He got fired there, and then he went to Murray State, I believe, McNeese State for 2 years, and then North Carolina State last year. Now he's back at LSU. So they've got Lane Kiffin and Will Wade. Picture the Wild West shadiest characters now in charge at LSU. Well, Will Wade, he went out and signed a whole bunch of guys that had already signed, D-League contracts. They're now ineligible. So he's only got 4 eligible players on his roster heading into the season. And it'll be interesting to see what happens there. But the SEC voted 16-0 to go ahead and not allow these guys to come back. Now they voted 15-0. LSU abstained for the pro guys. So it's just a mess. It makes just puts a dark stain on college athletics. But it's people like LSU has that have always been involved in college athletics. There's always been those that want to skirt the rules, that want to do anything for selfish reasons to win. But now you've got the added element of millions of dollars. LSU's payroll is $40 million for football. Are you kidding me? You think they got pressure on them? You bet they do. When you're spending that kind of money on a roster, you better come through. And if they can't, if they don't have a magical year this year, it's going to be hell to pay in Louisiana. So that's the problem. And you guys, of course, I'm sure you've talked in the past few weeks about the Brandon Sorsby case in Texas Tech. And the Big 12 drew the line there on gambling. No, we're not going to let this guy play. Even though a judge in Texas said he could, we're going to draw a line, and teams were saying we're not going to play him, and so on. Well, I was glad to see that. Finally, we've drawn a line here. All right, finally, there's somebody out there with morals in college athletics. But Brandon Sorsby would never have been a news item if it was only a full ride like the old days. But the fact they paid $5 million for him, now they get a $5 million investment. They're trying to protect it, and there's it just adds to the stress. It adds to the taking away of what we all love about college sports, and it's just nobody. I think we're all anxious to get the game started again so we watch the games and don't have to listen to this garbage.
Yeah, so you have something else to talk about other than that.
Right.
I was glad to hear a couple other coaches in the ACC earlier today talk about the morale issue here. If you bring back one of these players, you've got kids that are going to be kicked off the team who have worked who have worked all summer, who've worked their butt off the last 2 or 3 years, maybe actually getting a starting position or backing up for the first time, would actually lose their spot on the team. So it's good that, you hardly hear the word morale in college football today. It's usually NIL and everything else that's been going on this offseason. So it is good to see some of these, and you got to wonder if these coaches actually mean it or they're doing it so other kids will listen and come to their school. But, we want to take the higher road and actually give them credit for having somewhat of a morale, right?
Yeah, you hope they would have the ethics to do it the right way. But, that it's assuming they're at the 105 player limit. That's the maximum number that a Power 4 team can have on their roster, 105. So it's possible LSU is maybe at 100 or 102, so they'd have some space, if you would, on that roster limit to add these guys. I'm assuming they would. But if not, if they were at 105, you're absolutely right. They've got to bounce some kid off their team who's been at camp at LSU all summer long, lifting weights, going through conditioning, going through practice, and here we are a week from the first game, and sorry, son, you're out because Daquan, the guy from the Cleveland Browns, and let me tell you, if you can't make Cleveland Browns, you might not be able to play in Power 4 football. So it's just shame all the way around because you're right. It takes away from the purpose of this. And I hope we have some leaders in college athletics now that are ready to stand up and take a leadership role and really, draw the line here. Let's bring some morals back into college football.
Well, and it's interesting, too, because the ACC not only said no NFL players coming to play college football, they went through all the sports, every single one. No WNBA players, no professional soccer players, no professional players of any one of their sports can come back because if they didn't do that, That'd be the next breaking news, right?
Yep, that's exactly right. And if you allow this, I heard on the radio today, they said, well, this is a one-time thing. There's not that many guys. And what is a big deal? Because that would mean in the years ahead, how many guys, after the third year of college football, go to the NFL draft, right? How many guys in the NBA are one and dones and they go on? The NBA allows them at 19 to go into the draft. And college football, I think that's 21. College baseball is 21. So the volume of guys in the future that could do this and want to come back because they find out they're not quite good enough for professional in their sport there's a lot of them. So I really I'm glad to see at least some people drew the line in the sand.
Yeah, and it's funny that the first thing out of his mouth when he was going to get signed to the practice squad at Cleveland, he said, "I'll just go back to LSU where I will make more money playing college football than I would being on the practice squad." And I believe the minimum, Shayne, you might know this, the minimum for a practice squad is $250,000.
I'm not aware personally what it was. I mean, when I was playing, it was like 80. Guys could make 80,000, but the minimum for a rookie was also 225. So I think it's
more
up there.
now,
it's in the six figures.
Yeah.
I think it's in the six figures for sure.
I think it's 350 or 385. I thought I saw today, but
wow.
What will be interesting that the next step in this conversation is what's the NFL going to do? The NFL Players Association, they got to be watching this. And what does this mean for us and our guys and our rosters? And if these guys in college, you can see why, especially in basketball, heck, I might as well stay in college instead of going pro. I can make more money unless I'm Cooper Flagg or, Yaxel for Michigan or that elite level guys. Why not stay in college? Stay in college and then make $1 million playing college basketball. It's a pretty good gig.
Yeah, and you're seeing that more in football because they can transfer and get signed a multi-million-dollar contract, and I think that was the whole point of this NIL, right? Getting players to stay longer, better quality football. They just, money's the root of all evil, though, and you knew something was going to spin out of control with this, and it has. But their whole point was, hey, we keep players in longer, better product on the field, more endorsement deals, more bigger TV deals, and all that stuff. But they just obviously didn't go back and look at every single rule. You've got ex-NBA players right now. They're trying to get eligible for the WNBA draft. The WNBA's got to fix all of that, and they got to figure that out. Or you're going to have two ex-NBA, in fact, one guy's an all-star, try and be in the WNBA draft next year.
Yeah.
It's out of control.
And you know what? As you said, money's the root of all evil. It all comes back to money. Guys, it just always does. Somebody's always trying to make money off sports, and they'll do stupid things and immoral things in order to make money. I mean, greed is a powerful force in our society, and you see it everywhere. When I was years ago, when I was at Toledo, one of the most successful businessmen in Toledo, all he said, money attracts scum. He was right then, and he's right today. Money does attract scum.
Shayne, you had a thought on the NFL Players Association dealing with this NIL?
I really don't know what they're going to be able to do besides possibly find a way to match or ante up with maybe the NBA or the Major League Baseball with the guarantees that they have in their contracts. And I don't even know that those are guaranteed the way that everyone thinks they are. I think just because you sign with a team doesn't mean you're going to make the salary. But I think instituting some form of you're guaranteed a little bit more than just we can cut you at any time and you don't get anything else type thing. That's maybe one thing they could do to try to entice guys to stay and make, that whole, the little confusion that happens with that, like, oh, we're going to give him a chance, but if he doesn't make it, he'll go back to college. Like, it's all a little weird to me to see this, just because I was so used to seeing it how it was when I played. But, the players still in the NFLPA, the way that the collective bargaining agreement, still only get 49% of all NFL revenue, and the owners get 51%, which I get it. The owners do need to get a big piece of that, because there's a lot of cost and things that goes involved with it, and making sure that the risk of their investment still gives them a profit. The thing is, they all get guaranteed profit, and you're still dividing 49% of your team's salary cap comes from that TV money contract. And now we're giving, a huge chunk of that to the quarterback, and then see who else gets it at the end. But, getting these NIL deals, I mean, those have gotten ridiculous. I think they need to find a way to put a cap on those, or make them, if you get them, it goes into a trust, and you get this much money while you're in school, because I think that creates issues in itself. That it's a whole different story to get into.
Exactly. Shayne, you know about this more than I, but I would suspect the one thing the NFL could do is say this kid from the Browns that wants to go back to LSU, guarantee him $500,000 to stay and be on the practice squad. Now, that is probably going to be challenged by the current veteran players. Why you give them more money? These guys, they haven't even made the team yet. All those kinds of arguments would probably take place. But I think the NFL has been riding. They've had their cake and eat it too for so long, because college football is their minor leagues, and they're preparing all these guys that fill their rosters. So they've got to. Maybe it's time they step up. But now the Protect College Sports Act, if it passes, and it appears if it is gaining support to pass, then it would create, I'll say, quote unquote, salary cap in college football, in college basketball. So there could become a day when, right now, Texas and Ohio State's football payrolls are evidently $40 million. Well, that's well beyond the $20 million that everybody agreed in the House settlement was going to be how much they could pay players. And so it'll just be interesting to see. It creates a lot of conversation. It makes the non-competitive discussions great for sports talk radio like we're on right now, but it's time for the games, and let's play the games and get back to just watching the competition. And hopefully as time goes here, we'll get some boundaries and things will sort itself out.
Yeah, I think when we can just get to where we can watch the game, be entertained by the game, and we're not even having conversations during the game about how much that guy makes and how much that guy makes, and we can actually just see the competitive spirit of the game, I think everyone will probably enjoy watching that quite a bit more.
I don't disagree with you. I've always said it doesn't matter. And Steve Project and I have had this conversation that, when the Spartans line up against the Wolverines, nobody's going to care about who's out there and how much you're getting paid. We want our school to beat your school. However, the volume of money changes things. And the pressure and the stress on the players now. Joe Fan in the stands knows Bobby, the cornerback, is getting $500,000 to play cornerback for one of these teams, and he gets burnt for a touchdown late in the game. They're not going to be happy with Bobby, the cornerback. And that's the price you pay. That goes with getting $500,000 to play college football. And those guys got to understand that. Now, we can all say, well, Bobby's just a 19, 20-year-old kid, lay off him. Yeah, well, you know what? Not when you're making $500,000. Bobby's in a different category now. And so that kind of thing now comes into play. And, of course, gambling is huge, and the bettors are getting brutal on these kids on social media and so on. And so that it creates a whole other level of security and monitoring that people that are leaders in college athletics got to get wrap their hands around, to make sure we can have what you just described, Shayne, that going to the game, the competitive spirit of our school and my alma mater playing against your alma mater.
Yeah, and you know what you just talked about, that's something that I dealt with. If I missed a kick, there were fans that were resentful, not just because they spent so much money on their season tickets and their clothing and their paraphernalia and their all of that stuff, but then they're resentful that you're making this kind of money to be this professional football player and you don't do as good as we feel like you should be doing for that amount of money. As a college fan, I was explaining how I keep my Sundays where I can train guys and I work throughout the day, and I'm not super concerned with watching NFL football. But what I loved about college football is how even if it's your team, you can be a little upset if a player on that team doesn't quite perform in a certain situation, but it's still your team and you still want that player to do better. Now that you've got he's making all that and he's still, and that definitely changes things, and hopefully it doesn't change the dynamic for the fanfare as well.
Well, I hope not, because, when we watch the Lions, we're all rooting for the Lions to win. And everybody jumps on the bandwagon when, now that they've gotten good again, we're all on the bandwagon, hope they win. And, when I watch the Lions play, I don't think about how much is Goff making, how much is, the running backs are making and all that. I just want to see them play well so, we can cheer them on. And my grandsons love the Lions and we can all be happy, right? We all want to go home with that warm and fuzzy feeling that our team won. And I'm hoping that'll be the case in college football, that it won't distract from the competitive spirit of the games and the intent that these young men and young ladies in the women's sports they're just trying to, they're getting their education paid for, so they're getting a little extra money. But, I've always said along, they should get some extra money. Goodness gracious. There's millions of people watching this and going to games, and they're the ones putting in all the work. They're the ones doing all the work, so they should get some. But I just hope somehow there's a balance in there, I guess is what I'm saying, that we can enjoy college athletics as we all have known it. And, here I am, guys, I'm just watching a bald eagle fly over my head right now while we speak. How about that? I bet you've never had that on this show before, have you?
Well, that's a good first.
America.
That was cool. Yeah, that was cool. But anyway, I just hope we can maintain college athletics. The great thing about them and that we all love about it, I hope it remains for many, many years to come.
Absolutely. Tim Selgo, thank you so much for joining us. We're glad we got a hold of you. And then now we can go and enjoy your grandson's football game.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate having me. And the next time you get a bald eagle sighting on your show, I want to hear about it, because I'll bet that's the last time you'll hear it.
Absolutely. Thanks, Tim.
All right, guys. Have a good one.
All right, Tim Selgo, former GVSU AD, joining the show. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back with Al Karsten, talk some Lions next on Jethro FM. You're listening to Shayne Graham's Extra Points, presented by Encore Business Group.
From the GarbarinoRoofs.com studios.
Country with a twist. Jethro FM. 1530 AM. WYGR, Wyoming, Grand Rapids. 94.9 FM, Grand Rapids. 99.5 FM, Lowell. And Jethro South. 980 AM. WAKV, Otsego, Plainwell. 98.9 FM, Otsego. And 105.1 FM, Kalamazoo.
Falls to the wayside, and then we can actually talk football. We got Shayne Graham in the studio. We got a few minutes before Al Karsten joins us. We're going to talk the final preseason game coming up Saturday with the Colts at 1 o'clock. We'll talk about the O-line worries and the defensive back worries and cutting down the roster. I got to get down to, I think, 53 players by Tuesday, if I'm correct. Tuesday, September 1st? Not sure.
I'm not sure exactly what the date is, because it's shorter this year, right? Like,
yeah, 3 games.
Yeah.
What's interesting is the season starting later. I always remember it starting September 7th, September 8th. It's the 12th, the 13th this year. I know they're kicking things off Wednesday. The opening game is, but I know the Lions don't start till September. I think September 13th is the first game, which is, so you've got To me, it just means you have more time to get injured before the season starts.
Well, and I guess the way that the NFLPA fought for certain things, and the league wanted to fight for certain things, it was kind of a consolation to get rid of one of those preseason games. But I know the coaches really like having that fourth game because it really gives them a chance to evaluate the players, because practice isn't really the main, some guys are great practice players, but seeing how you actually compete under duress in a game when you're going against other guys, things like that, it's a little different intensity than what you have in practice. And also, give a chance for the players you're evaluating to maybe get fatigued and see how they perform under fatigue situations. And if you're constantly, taking out certain players to put in other guys, no one's really getting super fatigued in a preseason game anymore, at least. And I think that kind of takes away that. But then I think the league's also trying to add games to the schedule if they're taking out preseason games. And it can kind of become a little difficult to truly evaluate. And who knows if you can even get a chance to see a new star emerge that kind of slipped through the cracks a little bit and didn't get drafted. So it might be a little tougher, not having as many special teams plays to see guys get a chance to make the team because of their special teams effort, or get in the game and make an interception or make a big play somewhere that, they just didn't have the time to do it. And also you want to let your starters get a little bit of time as well, because they need to knock off some rust themselves.
Well, and that's the big thing I want to talk to Al about. Al Karsten joining us here in just a second, is that of all the seasons that we need that fourth game because we lost our signing, our free agent, our big center to injury, that we've got to get this offensive line to gel. I think they need that fourth preseason game to get this offensive line fixed and gelling and playing, rather than getting a full week off and then starting the season. Al Karsten joining us.
Hey, fellas. I'm also, I think, of all the players in preseason week 3 that I'm curious if they get snaps or not, because I don't think it'll be a lot of starters given they scrimmaged today, is do they give Juice Scruggs, do they give him and maybe Christian Mahogany 2 drives with Luke Altmaier?
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting. We were talking earlier before we had you on about this offensive line. I'm still so worried. Everyone's saying we got the break with the schedule, but that's, you still have to worry about the injuries. And I don't think a lot of fans didn't understand what a great signing and what a really good, solid player May is. He's a borderline Pro Bowl player, and you lose him, and now you're counting on an undrafted rookie who's still recovering from an Achilles, and Juice Scruggs, who's played center before. But again, it'll be interesting how much time these guys get Saturday to get the kinks worked out.
With the scrimmage today, I don't think it'll be as much time for the starters. I'm very curious if it'll be more dialed back, even in preseason week 1. But I will say, Dan Campbell had some reassuring things to say yesterday about Juice Scruggs and the exposure he's gotten and him starting to put it together and get comfortable in the offense. And let's keep in mind that week 1, even if it's against Brandon Staley, who is a phenomenal defense coordinator, say what you will about him as a head coach, but he put together a solid unit last year for the Saints. We are still 17 days away from that Sunday. So they still have plenty of more practices to get Juice Scruggs comfortable playing next to Tate Ratledge, Christian Mahogany, snapping to Jared Goff, and reacclimating to the center position. And I spoke with him maybe last week actually, and I'm a little intrigued by his stoutness, similar to Cade Mays, and it was a big reassuring reason why. Juice Scruggs, was a smaller center when he came out from Penn State. He's up to 320. He told me he's in the best shape of his life. He's the heaviest he's ever been at the same time. I'm intrigued, and I think Juice Scruggs will get there with some learning curves up until the bye week. But I still think it'll be a more cohesive, coalesced unit than they dealt with in week 1 last year.
Yeah, well, I watched week 2. I watched it Monday before I had to host the show Monday, and I could not believe Dan Campbell. You would have thought it was week 9 of the season, as fired up as he was, because that offensive line, that first series, just looked awful. Missed assignments, missed blocks. It was absolutely incredible. And my first thought was, whoa, we need a 4th game. We need a 4th preseason game to get these guys on the right track. Can we do this with practices and scrimmages, or do you need that game speed, even if it is a preseason game?
I think they're comfortable with just the 3 because, I don't even know if they value the 4th game at this point with the starters of the offensive line. And, if you listen to Dan Campbell today, this afternoon, he talked about how he doesn't regret. He appreciated the decision to not do joint practices and the competition they got Lions versus Lions. He talked about if there's not many interior defensive linemen they're going to see in a preseason game that are better than facing Tyleek Williams and Aleem McNeil every single day. And they've gotten a lot of scrimmage environment practices in that are pretty full contact, real time. And I'll tell you what, you saw it in the last 2 preseason games. Kelvin Shepherd isn't holding back with dialing things up and stunting the defensive line. So I do think they are getting more challenges this year in August in competitive practices than they did last year.
Yeah, and I think Washington they actually looked surprised on how aggressive Shepherd was calling that game Saturday.
I know, right? That was pretty impressive. They got after it. They were pinning their ears back, and it's just, that's one of my biggest takeaways or standouts is just that the defense, while they're still going to, have gap responsibility, they're doing a little more pre-snap and post-snap movement. They're stunting better. They're slanting. And, they were even practicing it 2 days ago. They were practicing like a 2-on-2 offensive line pass protection, defensive line pass blocking. It's an advantage for the offensive line, but they were practicing those twists and just continuing to refine and get those down and just try and find guys that, can set that pick essentially and can loop around efficiently and start to get maybe some quicker pressures or tackles for loss just due to miscommunication. Make the offensive line and the quarterback second guess after the snap a little bit more,
Yep. Position battles. We're getting down there. How are they looking? I know there's more defensive back battles, but there's still a lot of guys that are very, very close to earning a spot on this team. And linebacker's another one that we weren't kind of counting on, but there is a battle at linebacker as well, isn't there?
Yeah, and you saw yesterday where Malcolm Rodriguez started to take all the snaps from the 1, but he's really, since he came back from injury and they signed Devin White, there's a real battle for that linebacker 3 spot, the will spot, and that's going to go down to the wire. We got 2 weeks left of practice. They had the scrimmage today. That's going to be really interesting for that linebacker 3, especially since they ended up, unfortunately, putting Damone Clark on the injured reserve yesterday. But also, your 5th linebacker is going to be Nowosky, right? You don't know what they're doing with Jimmy Rolder. But then it comes down to between Reeder, Amen Agbongunga, Eric Hunter, and Joe Bacci, which of those guys is going to be the last linebacker on the roster, I think is one of the most crucial decisions that will go down to the wire by 1 o'clock Sunday. That one, and then the defensive line, the 10th defensive lineman / the kind of 5th interior defensive lineman, kind of Tyler Lacey as an end there, is you've got Chris Smith, who they've trusted. He's been in the practice squad for the last 2 years from Harvard, Notre Dame. And then the second guy, Ben Stilley, who I spoke with yesterday after practice, and he's really starting to feel comfortable and acclimated to the defense. And they like him. He's versatile. He's got a lot of Patrick O'Connor in him. And then maybe a little Kaminsky as well. And then there's Mekhi Wingo. Does Mekhi Wingo do enough to, even though he can't play nose like those 2 other guys, and he's not as much of a run stuffer, is he too valuable to lose as that 10th defensive lineman, even if maybe he's not active every game? So I'm supremely curious by that DT5, D-line 10. But I think one of the most important ones, with Christian Izien now likely out for the Saints, is that nickel spot. Really seems like they are, they're opening a fire hydrant and putting Keith Abney's mouth around and dousing him in reps. He's getting reps at nickel with the 1s and the 2s, and I think clearly they've moved Roger McCreary off that. He started camp as the number 1 nickel while Izien was hurt. And now he's hurt again. There's a few guys that have gotten hurt twice now in camp, which is unfortunate. But I think Keith Abney, the rookie, day 3 rookie, is probably going to get the first nickel snaps in week 1, and then we're going to see how that goes.
Yeah, Rakestraw did not look good Saturday. A lot of concern. We were hoping that he'd progress. You really want to root for this guy with all the injuries and everything.
Of course.
You really do, but man, the terrible holding penalty on that third down would have got him off the field. It's just, when you struggle like that and you've got that spotlight on you, you just can't do that even in preseason.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, preseason refs know. They're looking for it, right? Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, I think Rakestraw is still, no matter what, on the roster. And we'll see about Roger McCreary. I'm very curious. I think both of them are useful players, but most of them have kind of been played out of the nickel battle, and they're both kind of playing outside now, and they're both playing, Rakestraw is still definitively with the twos, probably like that third outside corner, him versus Nick Whiteside, but McCreary and Rakestraw, I'm really curious, and those are guys who might eventually need snaps this season.
Any concern about Jake Bates? I want to bring Shayne Graham in. He's the former Pro Bowl kicker.
Yeah, I figured we'd talk. Bates.
Jake Bates has not looked good this preseason. He did change his stance. He moved up a step, I believe.
Yeah.
Shayne, what are your concerns about? He moved up a step, thought it would give him more strength, thought it would make him more accurate. He was pushing the ball to the right, and nothing's really changed. We've seen some pretty easy misses here in the preseason.
Well, anytime you make a change and stick with it, you have to believe in it and trust it. Mm-hmm. And I'm not super familiar. I did not work with him, in this offseason, so I'm not familiar what changes he made and what his reasoning was behind it. I'd love to have those conversations with him, as I believe I could get to the bottom of it a little bit more and maybe, see if there's an alternative or see if we can make whatever the change was work better. But, that's tough. As long as you make that change soon enough in the off season to be able to create a comfort zone around it versus there still being a little bit of hesitation and doubt because you're getting used to it still. I'd need to know a little more about that. But, I've seen some guys have a not so great preseason and then have an amazing season. I've seen some guys have an amazing preseason and then not have a great season. So, hopefully it's not bad enough that they feel that they need to make a change. But, I'd like to see him stick through this and maybe kind of find his groove and then, hit that confidence and kind of ride the wave through the season.
Al, any concern, any rumblings in the coach's room about Bates?
No, I don't think there's any rumblings yet. I think Shayne drilled it. I would like to know more about the decision making and when in the process he began to get, because I think he's right. I think Shayne's right that there's maybe still some hesitation and some newness to it, as opposed to just like confident, swinging through it. And I don't think leg strength was ever an issue with him. But yeah, you want to see him get a little more consistent.
Yeah. Well, we know we're not going to see our quarterback and running back and any of those guys Saturday. Is there concern? I know there's concern among fans. The rust that we saw last year in week 1, and now we got 17 days. Like you said, we have 17 days till game 1. How does this team not come out and look rusty like they did in week 1 last year?
You know what? A lot of them got reps on Saturday against the Commanders. I think that was big, and I think, the heavy investment guys you can trust not to have rust, and I think you got to believe in. They took I think that game had a lot of effect on the coaching staff and some of the decisions they made, dating back to even not having the last mandatory mini camp, not having the rookie mini camp or OTAs, and then how they decided not to do the joint practices. I think, it's different, and you got to believe how competitive and how enthusiastic they feel about this practice. Because a lot of times, joint practices, you see the fighting. You saw the rookie Bears guy try and take on all the Titans today. It can be ineffective. It's not controlled, and you don't trust the other coaching staff. So, it sounds like Dan Campbell made it seem like he was very happy with the way training camp unraveled and how, Lions on Lions, how competitive it was. I'm not going to worry about Russ till we see it, And Dan Campbell said, week one's going to be the real barometer. He admitted that, but at the same time, I think you just got to believe that some of those guys got some real action in that needed it in week 2 preseason and go from there.
Lions set in Sam Laporta back at practice on Tuesday. They say the hip's not an issue. Is there any concern going forward with that, of him being absolutely 100% healthy and ready to go in week 1?
You don't want to see a tight end with a back injury have a hip flare up, but the fact that he came back so early when he could have rested him for another week, 10 days, has to be reassuring. He was on somewhat of a load management count to start training camp, and then he was out for a brief period of time, but I think he'll be a comfortable player to ease into the season at 100%.
Okay.
And I do think it helps that it's a home game week 1 this year, So if there is a little rust, if there is a little butterflies, you got one of the best fan bases at home behind your back and reminding you who you are. Yeah,
and they'll remind them. Trust me. This team was so disappointed in last year, even with all the injuries, to finish over 500. I thought it was great, but these fans, they know the opportunity. They keep thinking that this is the year. We need to do it with a schedule. I don't care what everyone says, schedule, but these teams, the Saints were getting good the last 6 weeks last year. They were really turning things around, and they're not going to the season like we're going to get kicked around. They are thinking playoffs.
I think they have confidence. I think they want a division title. I think they want to make the postseason. And I think I wrote when the schedule came out, or even before it, that I think the Saints defense might be the best, not most talented, but just the best defense the Lions play all season. I mean, you can obviously argue that, the Vikings are going to be possible juggernaut again under Flores, but I just wanted to emphasize how, that defense shouldn't be taken for granted. And they have playmakers and they have an offensive line. So that's a dangerous team week 1.
All right, we're going to take a short break. Can you come around after we come back? Another segment?
Sure can do.
All right.
Can't wait.
All right, you're listening to Shayne Graham's Extra Points with Ryan Walsh. Welcome back to Shayne Graham's Extra Points with Ryan Walsh, presented by Encore Business Group. We're talking to L. Karsten, all things Lions, as we get ramped up for the final preseason game, Saturday, 1 o'clock at the Colts. It'll be aired on Fox 17. What do you think about Jason Benetti doing the preseason games? He's been pretty good. You there, Al?
Yeah, how can you not love it? I thought he was incredible. I honestly thought Jake Kaiser, his fill-in for week 1, also did a pretty darn good job. But, yeah, Benetti, you can't beat it. I mean, it's the Lions are back. There's football in there, and you still got Benetti calling it. That's been an awesome broadcast. I
did notice on the 50-yard touchdown run by the quarterback that he did say he's out of here. And I'm like, Jason, that's a home run call. He's still calling the home run. But I'm like, it's preseason. He can make mistakes,
he definitely
right?
wrote that in his pregame notes that if he has an opportunity, he's going to make a comparison, right?
Okay. Let's take a look at injuries right now. We know Isaiah Pacheco's not back at practice, but we saw Whiteside leave practice. I don't know what injury. There's an undisclosed injury with Miles Frazier. I don't know how much you know about that.
Whiteside came back yesterday.
Oh, he did come back? Okay,
yeah,
good.
He exited Monday. Same thing with Frazier. Frazier's definitely a knee. I mean, he's got Robocop's arm on his leg. It's definitely a left leg injury, but we don't know the details on that. So, I mean, he'll be easing in, and I don't think he'd even be used unless they needed a fourth offensive tackle or a fourth offensive guard at this point. So I think he'll be able to. I mean, he's had a great camp, showing versatility. He had some struggles in the preseason game, but I think overall he showed good versatility as that eighth offensive line utility guy. Injury wise, it's going to be curious who's getting touches at running back if Pacheco. Dan Campbell sounded despondent about that back injury, which somehow, popped up after the knee injury when he was already injured. So, is it Vaki or Sailors getting the 15 snaps on week 1 at running back?
And that's going to be tough. Sailors looked really good Saturday. Boy,
back-to-back days, I think. He's really shown a different element to his game than I think he did last year. I think maybe not. His legs might have been a little dead coming off the UFL season last year. I've been really, really impressed. He's been impressive the last 2 preseason games.
Yeah, and Shane and I were talking earlier about these guys. Now that you've got 3 preseason games, it's shorter time to evaluate and make cuts. We weren't for sure how they have to, what time they have to get down to the 53-man roster. It's not Tuesday, September 1st, is it?
No, it's Sunday. It's a quick turnaround. I think it's a little bit of baloney that some teams are playing today, get to watch their tonight, get to watch their week 3 preseason tape, and then even possibly have a practice again on Saturday if they so chose to stagger their 19 allotted practices that way. But there are teams that get 2 days to evaluate those final roster spots, while the Lions have to turn around from 1 o'clock on Saturday to I can't remember if it's 1 o'clock or 4 o'clock, but it is Sunday. Is the cutting down from 90 to 53 and then quickly making those practice squad calls. It is no longer how it was 3 or 4 years ago, where there's that after the second or third game where you cut down to 75 or whatever it was.
Yep.
Yeah, it's jarring, right? But I think the team still has been making a lot of those same decisions. I think that 4th extra game just let you have the more precise players battling for the 53-man get more reps in the 4th game, really.
Man, it's going to be interesting. I got a feeling you're going to see more guys that get cut that are actually going to get signed to another team and make a difference with these short turnarounds with the players cut after a Saturday game. I think you got to be even more careful evaluating these young guys. That's crazy that quick turnaround.
It's under a microscope. It is a really condensed microscope. And like I said earlier, I mean, I fully believe that Troy Reeder, possibly Eric Hunter at that linebacker, if they don't make it, they might get a call from another team that's linebacker needy. Mekhi Wingo or Ben Stilley, I don't think they'll be practice squad guys. I think they'll be on another team's roster. Can't say the same about, maybe Dominic Lovett. We'll see about Devin Cochran. I think he's actually been pretty solid, and I hope he gets a practice squad call up. Another guy, Amaris Brown, undrafted free agent, who's gotten a little bit of runs with the 2s and occasionally the 1s because of safety injuries. I think he's going to be a great practice squad candidate. And obviously Eric O'Neill, I think, is the best one that hopefully he's able to be stashed on the practice squad and not someone's 4th, 5th edge rusher.
Yeah, and how many? It's different with baseball. With baseball, you get so many times you can get called down and be on the roster and not get plucked. Different with the NFL. You're on the practice squad, you can just get plucked, correct?
Yes. Yeah. If you, at any time, you're available.
Yeah. See, and you've got, I really think if Wingo's not on the team, he's absolutely going to get another chance with another team.
Fully believe it. Why wouldn't the Buccaneers want him to be the backup to Kalijah Cansey or someone like that uses some of those smaller, one-gapping 3 techniques?
Yeah, and he was a playmaker last year when he filled in. Absolutely
when he
made
filled
plays.
in for the Bears game, and I was really intrigued. I knew that Skylar Gill Howard and him would probably be duplicative, and both wouldn't make the 53-man roster. But my initial 53-man, I couldn't make a decision between the 2 before camp started. I had both of them on there. I just couldn't make a decision, and maybe both would continue to make plays and somehow earn a roster spot. But it's unfortunate that Mekhi had the injury, and he made a play or 2 here in the last week. So you never know. You never know how things can go on Saturday. But I think they really need a backup nose tackle that's not just Aleem McNeil.
Yeah, I really think Aleem McNeil is going to have an incredible year. I think now he's absolutely back. There was so many questions last year after he was given the contract, not making plays, and he's one of those guys that he doesn't fill the stat sheet, but if you watch him on every play, he's worth every penny that they paid him. In my opinion, that's what I believe.
He's a problem. There was unusual amount of vitriol towards him for underperforming, being a guy that's 320 coming off a serious leg injury. He just didn't have that juice he normally does, and you can tell he's confident in his leg. Because I honestly think I would put him as one of maybe like my top 5 to 7, really, standouts of training camp and of the last 19 practices. I think Ali McNeil has looked like an absolute stud. He's had some juggernaut fights with Tate Ratledge. It's been just as much as Penny Sewell and Aiden Hutchinson as iron sharpens iron. I think Tate versus McNeil has been pretty intriguing, and his sidekick of the Burley Bash brothers, Tyreek Williams, has also had himself a solid camp.
Yeah, and I think he wants to make a statement too. He got the pay, and then he got injured. I think he wants to come back and prove that he's earned that contract and really wants to have a standout year.
He wants to be one of those core players, and I do really think him and Tyreek can shapeshift this defense. This defense can be 9 day. It can be borderline top 10, possible top 10 team if they're both dominant, playing really well. But if they're not affecting the other team as much as the investments lines have placed in them, then I think it's back in the maybe a top 20 defense. I think they really are two of the biggest Jenga pieces for that defense.
Back to the defensive backfield here real quick. Less man-to-man this year we're going to see from Shepard. I think you have to play more zone. Have you seen more zone in scrimmages and practices?
Yep. I think that's another thing. Again, I think Shep's one of my standouts of training camp as well. It's just him and Petzing both I've been pretty impressed with. But, yeah, Shep I think is going to call more zone, less man, and also maybe rely on a little more zone, even on early downs, when they're able to not have to turn their back to the team. So maybe that'll help the run defense a little bit. But then also maybe he starts to mix in some more zone blitzes as well. So I'm really intrigued to see when he fully unleashes on the New Orleans Saints, what the defense looks like and what he's learned. And Dan Campbell said it, before training camp started, how first thing they did at the end of last season, when they came back, watched the tape, is Dan Campbell sat down with the defensive coaching staff and he talked about how much trust he has in them. And a year or two under Shep, I think there will be a difference.
And I think not only do they have to play more zone just because they don't have the guys who can play man-to-man, but he also has a lot of confidence that defensive line and those edges are going to cause a lot of havoc this year.
Yep, and they had 49 sacks last year. That's such a good number, tied for fourth, I believe. But I think it's the quality of the sacks, the quality of the pressure. I think just overall they'll have quicker, earlier, more consistent disruption, even if it doesn't result in sacks. And they're just going to complement the coverage a little bit more, because I really, really think this is the most talented defensive line under the Dan Campbell era. The deepest and the best. I think he called it the best depth and most versatile. 2 days ago at the press conference, Dan said that. And when you look at it, okay, you've got Aiden, you've got Aleem. Those are the two Titans. And there's Tyreek right there. He's the third guy. DJ Wanham has started to come on strong a little bit this last week. That's something good to see. Obviously, Derek Moore was a shop record. It's unfortunate he got hurt a second time, but if he can be a guy that provides juice, and then you've got Levi Onwuzurike and Skylar Gill-Howard, now we're talking about 7 guys on the defensive line that you're comfortable rotating in, getting 20 snaps a game. And then I haven't even mentioned Ahmad Hassan yet. And I haven't mentioned Taylor Lacey. Taylor Lacey had a pretty consistent, especially early on, he was pretty strong in camp. But Ahmad Hassan, after Peyton Turner went down, you really didn't know, all right, who's going to step up as that fourth edge? But he totally changed his body. If Ahmad Hassan gets 10 to 12 snaps a week to start, he's going to make the most out of it. I think they've got a lot of players they can mix and match with, and I think they can keep people fresh. They can keep Hutch fresh. I think it's got potential to be a dangerous, game-changing defensive line.
Yeah, if you can get anything. I really liked Hassanin when they drafted him. I was so bummed when he got hurt, but that is absolutely a great point. You've got to get Hutch some rest. We saw him fade towards the end of the season just by pure exhaustion for playing so many plays. And, when you're tired like that, then you start to see those, not just injuries, but a real serious injury pop up, not just the nagging ones that you get week by week by being double-teamed, triple-teamed. and hit by a tight end so many times, knocked off your post, knocked off balance. But I'm really excited about this Hassanin kid. Not only he's got a flair, but he's just such a good kid, and he's so easy to root for.
Yep, it's like an immediate one of the fan favorites. And the coolest, I mean, with that injury, man, for him to be able to then make a decision for him to maybe be that big end role and add weight while losing body fat. I mean, he's totally rebuilt his body because he was a little more scrawny. That's why he got hurt. And so, like, just for him to just totally evolve as a body type player, and now they're kicking him inside at times to create, you know, be a interior pressure guy. And him versus a guard is unfair. Same thing goes for Skylar Bill Howard. I think there's just guys they can rotate in and get quicker pressure on the interior, and it's not just all on Aiden. It's not just all on Aleem. It'll be really, really impressive to see.
Yeah, we're getting excited. We're getting excited after Saturday.
Yeah.
It's all going to ramp up after Saturday, isn't it? Lions football.
We haven't even talked about, you know, offensive firepower and Jameson Williams probably being the biggest standout of camp. Like, I think that'll help carry over, even with the offensive line problems early on. Jameson Williams, Jahmyr Gibbs, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jared Goff, those guys. It's going to be incredible this year.
Yeah, can't wait. Al Karsten, where can we find you if we're looking for you on the internet?
You can read me with all the other talented writers at Pride of Detroit, and then football guy _ Al on Twitter.
All right. Thanks so much, Al. Thanks for joining us. I'm sure we'll be talking to you here soon.
Sure will. All right. Thank you so much. Have a good one.
You bet. Al. Welcome back to Shayne Graham's Extra Points with Ryan Walsh. We're presented by Encore Business Group. Seems real funny being in the studio by myself. Shayne Graham had to take off for the night, and I'm like, I'm not gonna. I can run my mouth for 10 minutes. I don't have any problem with that, but I'd rather have someone who I'm comfortable with, and I'm like, and I want to talk Tigers baseball. So I texted Jayden Hewitt, and he was like, yeah, I'll come on. So Jayden, thanks so much for hopping on here for the last few minutes of the show.
Oh yeah. I was out of the studio today, but I was on standby, and Jeff shot me the text, and I was like, why not? You know, it's a little. We got to talk Tigers and talk about how depressing they are. So it was the perfect little late night excursion.
Yeah, we were hoping to take 2 of 3 from Tampa to get some momentum coming into the big weekend. I was looking on StubHub earlier today. It just doesn't seem like there's a whole lot of hype with Skubal pitching tomorrow night. Tickets were still really reasonable. I have to imagine it's the fans were so sick and tired of hearing if he's going to stay or if he's going to go. And once he left, it was like, all right, good riddance. But he's back. He's pitching tomorrow night. And I haven't heard anything about a sellout. There's plenty of tickets left. What are your thoughts on Skubal back on the mound in a Dodgers uniform?
It's going to be very weird to see. And even though the stadium's not sold out, the tickets are probably a little bit out of my price range. They're a little bit out of my budget. But, you know, it's going to be a really, really weird thing to see in general. We've never seen Skubal in Comerica Park in another uniform. So I'm excited though, because I think that people are gonna rag on him a little bit. I think we might play well against them. I think that's kind of what I expect. But I also do like Tarik Skubal still. So wish him the best if he pursues other opportunities than LA. But for now, I have to root against him. So
right. A lot of rumors out of L.A. Earlier in the week about them not signing him at the end of the season. Mm-hmm. Got to wonder how much truth there is to that. I know obviously there's a lot of trolls on the internet, a lot of clickbait, but according to Dave Roberts, boy, they don't seem real certain that they're actually going to bring him back.
Yeah, and it's kind of the Scott Boras special, I think, too. I think that has a lot to do with it, a lot of agent rumor stuff floating around. And I think that has a lot to do with it. But I also do think that there's some validity to when Skubal recently has even said that he would love to, come back to Detroit. I think there's validity to that. I don't think that the Tigers would fork up the contract that he'd be looking for. So I think there's a 95% chance he ends up elsewhere. And I think there's probably a 70% chance he's a Dodger still. I think that's a lot of negotiation speak, but yeah, I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that he remains a Dodger for a long time or the rest of his career. Skubal is a West Coast guy from the Pacific, or played in the Pacific Northwest. So, and I believe he's from Arizona. So, he's kind of been all over that West Coast now, obviously being in LA and playing in Seattle. So I think that there's a chance that he stays out West and stays close to his family, but you never know. There's a lot of big spenders. The Red Sox, are a team that has recently spent less, but probably would like to spend more. The Yankees, obviously, are always big spenders. So those are always teams to watch out for, and obviously the Dodgers. But you never know. Maybe a sneaky Rays signing or something like that. Who knows with the new CBA and lockout stuff.
If he signed with Tampa Bay, if he signs anything less than a 7-year deal, how mad are Tiger fans going to be at Scott Harris? Because the whole talk is he wants 10 years, he wants 10 years, he wants 10 years. No team in the MLB, even the Dodgers, they're a well-run organization, one of the best. I don't think they give him 10 years, what he's asking. And that was the whole talk here. They didn't want to pay him 10 years, $400 million. And I think that's a lot of the Dodgers are doing a lot of, maybe circumventing is the wrong word, but they are doing a lot of interesting things with how they manage their money. So 10 years, maybe not out of the realm with a lot of options, but you could say the same about any team at that point, just including options in his deal. So it is interesting. I don't know how many options opt-outs he wants, or what it may look like. And the only reason I mentioned Tampa is because at this point, the current negotiations, it looks like the owners are at least at the bare minimum going to push for a salary floor, and they obviously want a cap and floor. So teams like that are going to have to start spending more money, and obviously in a team that's in that type of position, you could see a Brewers team, a Rays team, somebody like that sneaky that they thought about trading for him, so maybe they look at signing him in the offseason. I think things are going to get weird if we even have baseball. So yeah. That's true. I don't know if you caught Bob Costas's thought. I think he talked yesterday on the Rich Eisen show. It was brilliant. I'm like, why can't you have Bob Costas just be a mediator and go in there and get this deal done? Everyone listens to Bob Costas. Don't you think that the Players Association and the owners would listen to Bob Costas? Because he had it all figured out. It was brilliant. I was like listening going, yeah, Bob, why don't you call these guys up and then let's get a deal done so then we don't have to sweat not having baseball next year.
That might make too much sense, though. I think they like to, between on both sides of the equation, they like to make it harder on themselves, and they really need to. I think they're both going to be playing a lot of hardball. The owners obviously are going to protect themselves, and for maybe the first time ever, I'm probably on the side of the owners more than the players' union, which is a pretty rare occurrence for me, because usually the owners are trying to do things that aren't in the best interest of anybody but themselves. I think we kind of know that about baseball ownership and sports ownership in general. But at this point, the excuse from the players' union is that there is parity in the league right now, despite the payroll differences. But there are a lot of angry fan bases that at this point usually would not sign with the owners until their team traded away all their players, such as the Athletics have done that, the Rays have done it, traded away their best players because they don't want to spend the money. So It's like you would think that somebody would listen to somebody at some point, but who knows what's going to happen with that.
All right, Jayden, we got to take a quick break and we'll come back and wrap up. Sound good?
Sweet.
All right, we'll be back. You're listening to Shayne Graham's Extra Points with Ryan Walsh. You're going to tune in tomorrow night, for sure, right?
What's that, sir?
You're going to tune in tomorrow night for sure, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, I know you're a big baseball guy. Yep, I am too. Now, my MLB package does end on Monday because I canceled and I paid for August, but it is expiring, so I don't know how much baseball I am going to watch in September. I do want to watch. They're going to have 2 call-ups. It'll be interested who gets called up and how long they're up. So I might just fork over the 1995 and just suffer with the rest of us for the rest of the season. It's exciting.
Yeah.
I am excited about the Lions, but it's still baseball season to me, and I just love the Tigers too much to let go.
Yeah, it is tough, and it is exciting to see the young guys. And theoretically, the Tigers are technically not out of it, but I would say that there's a 99.9% chance the Tigers are not in the playoffs. But it is going to be fun to watch some September baseball with the younger guys and a couple guys coming up. Those could be any one of our Toledo guys, honestly. River Ryan is one of the guys that we got in the trade and with Scooble, and he's an exciting player that I would love to see before the end of the year. He's been dealing with an injury, so I'm really hoping to see him, and hopefully get some idea of what the team's going to look like next year, because I view this last month as an audition for a lot of guys that have a lot of team control, and especially for guys that like Kerry Carpenter and Spencer Torkelson, who we talked about last time, that really could be on their way out. And so this last month is kind of a proving ground for everybody, and it'll really kind of shape how the offseason goes, aside from the inevitable lockout as well. So that has a lot to do with it, and I'd be curious to ask Scott Harris how he's going to approach the offseason off the record some point, and what he's going to do, because I would love to hear what GMs are thinking about this at this point.
Yeah, should be interesting, should be fun. Well, we'll tune in tomorrow night, and Ryan will be back Monday. He'll be back. I think he flies in, was it late tonight or tomorrow? I'm not sure.
I think so. I'm not sure. It's not even confirmed that he's going to be back.
Right. That's why I'm going to text him tomorrow morning when I get to work and see if he's made it back. So anyway, thanks for hanging out with us. I appreciate it.